And it was because we want to believe that our little girls are safe. So we want to believe that when we go on holiday, we will not do things that leave them exposed to the possibility of abduction. And the details of the McCann's case lent themselves to sort of amateur sleuthing and amateur blaming. We took calls, I don't know if you remember, from people who reminded us that in the holiday camps of the 60s and the 70s, you'd tie a handkerchief to the door of your chalet to advertise to everybody else in the holiday camp that they were unaccompanied children in the chalet while you went off to play bingo or enter the Nobody Knees contest or have your dinner, have your tea without the kids. And so that shift in public attitude was extraordinary. And it's ended up in a place where we attack often victims of terrible occurrences as a way of convincing ourselves that it could never happen to us. But bad things can happen to anybody. And you could ask this woman who radicalised Liz Truss, for example, as Lou suggests as a possibility for the topic that I'm currently unable to frame for myself. So anybody arguably can get radicalised if the circumstances are correct. And almost anybody, I think, can get groomed. It was a lesson of the conversations about the paedophile gangs that we've been having all week. How weird is it that when a 14-year-old boy gets murdered on a bus in London, people are queuing up to blame it on parenting or absent fathers, and yet when little girls get exploited and abused by gangs of paedophiles, nobody would dream of trying to blame it on, or at least an awful lot of the people trying to make political capital out of it would never dream about trying to blame it on the parents. I think that you can't have it both ways. I think if you're going to say that this 14-year-old lad has been murdered on a bus in London as a consequence of poor parenting, then you have to say the same about victims of other crimes that involve grooming. So Dan would have to say, for example, in response to the victims of the grooming gangs in Rotherham and Rochdale and Telford and elsewhere, he'd have to say these girls were as young as 10 and 11 when they were being groomed. What were you allowed to do when you were 10 or 11? It's obviously a failure of parenting. I don't know, Dan. He may get back in touch. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't say that about those white girls. But this black boy, he's perfectly happy to suggest is dead or a victim of crime as a consequence of poor parenting. Interesting. So, what happens? What happens? The mother of Kellyan Picasso has talked about how we all need to get involved, how he is in some ways a victim of an inevitable escalation, how he was exposed to drugs, how he was missing for a year, living on the streets, taken advantage of by gangs. She uses the word groomed. He turned up back on my doorstep after a year, underweight and tattooed. He probably experienced something. I could sense it. It sounds to my untutored eye like a county lines case, doesn't it? But I'm going to choose my words very carefully now, and you're going to help me. You're going to help me. You see a lad going to school, final year of primary school, right? And I don't know whether this is a bit glib or simplistic, but you know they're good boys, right? I come to work on public transport every morning, although if the weather doesn't improve, I might actually book myself a cab for the next couple of weeks. It's so cold. And the buses, you know what bus, well, you may not, but buses, if you catch them at a certain time of day, they are like ant farms of school children. And on my bus routes, there's a couple of all-boys state schools that are responsible for the bulk of the passengers that prevent me often from getting a seat. And there's a mix. There's always one doing his homework on his lap on the bus. There's 3 or 4 who are trying to play the same computer game or arguing over some technology. There's some who are just chatting. There's a couple who are sort of sitting there looking quite swattish and bookish and discussing matters academic, all of those things. But at that age, generally speaking, they are good boys. If you want a visual image You think of a boy, and I'm going to use Kellyan Bakassa as an example, so I'm going to reference his ethnicity, because getting involved in this kind of gang activity is disproportionately likely to happen to people from his ethnic demographic. It's more likely to happen to black kids. So it is not exclusively black kids that we're talking about today, but I think it's important to recognize that it is disproportionately black kids that we're talking about today. And we know the reasons, largely, are going to be driven by poverty, institutional racism, and even sort of post-colonial infrastructure. But that's a conversation for a different day. You see a black boy, 11 years old, walking to school with his tie done up correctly, looking smart. Mum's brushed his blazer. He's got a nice rucksack. He is a good kid. And the massive majority of lads in that category will remain so. But something happens when they leave primary school, when they become exposed to different influences. Teachers tell me that it is extraordinary. Kids get lost, even kids who don't end up in trouble either. And the thing about being murdered in circumstances like this is that the line between victim and perpetrator is quite perforated. He'd obviously been involved in criminality, so he is both a victim of crime in the worst imaginable way, and also a perpetrator, almost certainly, according to his mum, of crime as well. Something begins to happen, and it doesn't happen organically, does it? It's not like somebody wakes up one morning and decides, do you know what, I'm not going to do my homework today, I'm going to get involved in drugs or drug dealing, or do you know what, I'm not going to go and play football with those mates after school today, I'm going to go and smoke weed with those mates after school today. And a ball starts rolling, and for most of us, or for most of these young boys, that ball will carry on rolling, and it won't necessarily grow, it won't necessarily snowball. Lots of kids who become a little bit naughty at 13, 14 years old remain a little bit naughty to 18, 19, 25, 26 years old, but they never cross the big Rubicon. They never cross the line into from using to dealing, for example, from customer to vendor. But some do, and I want to know how it happens. I don't want to know why it happens, because you can't answer that question, and it's not helpful. Born though it is of a noble impulse to believe that it couldn't happen to you, it's not helpful to suggest that it happens because dad's not there, or it happens because culture, or it happens because music. All of these things may have contributions to make to the conversation, but how many times have we sat here and pointed out that simplistic answers to complicated questions make everything worse, not better? So Dan, I'm sorry to pick on you, mate. Dan might derive reassurance from the thought that it couldn't happen to his kids because of him. But what message does that send to the victims of all grooming gangs, of every hue, creed and colour? Are you really telling all of the parents and all of the victims of all of the grooming gangs that it's mum or dad's fault that they ended up in that? So I don't think you are, Dan, and I hope that's been helpful for you. But for me, talk me through the process. And it means either that you've been through it yourself, or you've watched it happen to somebody else, possibly someone you love. I just want to know what the process is. You don't have to give me all of it. You can give me various steps on the path to the sort of situation that Kellyan Bakassa seems to have found himself in. My son and others were taken advantage of by gangs. They were groomed. What does that mean? What does that mean? And I hope this isn't inappropriate. I hope this is helpful. What changes that 11-year-old on the bus in his blazer with his tie done up properly and his homework in his bag? What happens that can mean within 3 or 4 years that lad is a stranger to his own family, and quite possibly dead on the top deck of a London bus? What happens? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. The actual process, the conversations, the kind of parent
savings account means more paperwork. Apply for a savings account again. With Flagstone, you can open and manage hundreds of accounts from over 60 banks, all in one place, with one password. Sign up in minutes today. Flagstone. Smart saving. Surprisingly simple. Minimum deposit £10,000. Eligibility criteria apply.
Oniony,
yeah,
and paired with barbecue sauce, it's
the barbecue ranch stack, prepared to non-stop think about it. Until 11th of Feb, served from 11 a.m, subject to availability, participating restaurants only.
Fancy an extra £10 this January? With Little Plus Super Spin, your saving powers will be almost unstoppable, with a 1 in 10 chance to win an epic £10 coupon. Download Little Plus and get ends 15th to the 1st 25. 7 days to enter after purchasing min 1 item. Info formula and gift cards excluded. 18 plus GB only. T's and C's apply. Lidl.co.uk/bin.
Whatever your goal is, you'll find all the electricals you'll need to succeed at AO. Whether you're stepping into wellness, getting smart about saving energy, or just want to refresh old appliances, we've got all you'll need from brands like Hotpoint, Beko and Ninja. Plus a range of ways to pay, including AO Finance. No wonder we're the UK's most trusted electrical retailer. Shop now at ao.com. To verify most trusted, visit ao.com/trust.
Look at him go.
He's a quality striker.
No, not him. The electrician fixing those lights.
Wow. Is he?
Yes, he uses QuickBooks to prepare for self-assessment.
This is truly game-changing.
Use QuickBooks year-round to ensure your income tax return is shock-free. That's how you business differently. Intuit QuickBooks.
James O'Brien on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
22 minutes after 10. Is it a sliding door? Is there a pivot point, looking back, where you think that's where I went down the path I wish I'd never gone down? Anyway, you've heard enough from me. Let's open up the phone lines. Musa is in Thornton Heath. Musa, what made you pick up the phone?
Hey, you're right, James. Yeah, sorry, I was listening to you this morning and
Good. That's a good start.
And it just kind of got me thinking. I think, should I ring in and just sort of say what's on my mind, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell you, sort of thing, So basically, me and my brother and I went initially to a private school when we were very young. Mum and Dad put us straight into private school. They worked their asses off and got us into a private school. But during sort of secondary school sort of time, they couldn't, I don't know, for whatever reason, they couldn't keep us in private school, so they put us into public school. And that's where things really started to change, because when me and my brother went to a public school, we were very sort of like, we didn't have many friends there. We were sort of, we were bullied a lot as well. Mum's English, Dad's Turkish Cypriot, so we were bullied, because they knew we were Turkish. We had different names, obviously. And so we didn't have many sort of friends in secondary school at that time. So when we were sort of like leaving school, we would then meet other kids that were outside of school, and they were obviously in gangs, and that's where we made friends there.
What do you mean when you say obviously? Because remember, for a lot of people listening, perhaps for the people who were at your previous private school, and when you say public, just for clarity, you mean state, more commonly.
Sorry.
No, it's a weird sort of glitch of the English language
State
that public school generally refers to the most expensive schools in the country. But I know everyone knows what you mean. When you say obviously they were in gangs, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, they were the sort of kids that were outside of school. Not very common in this really, things like that. We were sort of,
Okay, so most kids are not going straight home.
Yeah. No, I know. Well, I think even the kids that were in our state school, most of them, we never saw any of them outside of school.
So thinking back to a moment, I presume you went, I don't know what word to use, rogue. I don't like the word bad, I apologise for using that, but where is the moment that, looking back, you see as pivotal?
I think it was at that moment when we went into public school. I think, I'm not saying anything about race or anything like that, but that did make it much more difficult for us.
But in terms of what happened to you, so when you made a choice, or you did something, do you see what I mean? So you were a good kid, and then you weren't.
If you listen to the story, you'll know. If you hear the sort of story of what actually happened, because I did most of this to protect my younger brother.
Yeah.
He was the clever one, he was the smart one. I knew he was going to do well, so I was there to sort of protect him. I didn't really care what happened to me at the time. I was a bad egg.
which you could have ended up being murdered.
No.
Okay. And I fully appreciate that. I really do. And I'm very relieved that you found yourself in nothing like the kind of situations that we're trying to explore this morning. But you make a valid point in that decision to do naughty things. And what am I looking for? Illegal things. It has very little, in your case, to do with background. Parents who...
My history teacher who tell me, you know what, you're intelligent, you're bright, you know,